14th. We need this. So it should be back, but I haven't used it since then.
Good evening. Hi, Trustee Gauze. Would you mind saying a few words just to test?
Hello, everyone. Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, something happened.
Okay. Oh, you have the little icon now.
Closer.
Oh, are those chats going to come through? Okay, that's a good idea.
We're just waiting.
Are you logged into Team? It's still showing up. You might be good at the 3 dots. If you, well, on the little. Jimson, send another chat so that we can make sure we turn off the Teams thing because it's showing up on the big screen here. Jimson?
Yes.
Okay. Bob said he's in the Zoom waiting room, but.
So we use this, we push this button on the back.
No, don't push any button. It's on right now. It'll
So you just talk to it.
You just talk to it. Yeah, you don't press anything. If you press something, you might mute it by Trustee Pryor, can you mute yourself because there's some interference?
From that section. I do miss one part, but not that part.
Thank you. And Bob, can you say a couple words just so we can be sure we hear you?
You can hear me, I hope.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay.
All right, wonderful. It is 6:03, and I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. Trustees in the room, I will pass this little microphone down. Apparently, we just hold it. President Sarah Masinski.
Vice President for Finance, Allen.
Trustee Jackson.
Trustee Marlowe. Trustee Barnum, Secretary.
Trustee Veneta.
Sean Smith, Board Treasurer. Adam Stump, Director of Finance.
Andrea Nicolai, Executive Director, and then the online folks.
Trustee Jaragos.
Trustee Pryor.
Trustee Andrea West, Vice President.
Thank you. Council?
Sorry, did you want me to say Robert Schofield as well?
Yeah, please. Thank you. All right. Moving on, first item is public comment. Okay. Okay. Okay, we'll try and navigate this. Is there public comment?
You're gonna have to speak into the microphone. have you stand right over here, if you don't mind. Yeah, just so you're on the camera. Yep, sorry.
I just wanted to let, my name is Leslie Dykeman. I live on Cardinal Avenue in Albany. I just want to bring up that I was helped by a particularly helpful person in the staff named Susan Palmer. I had a really tough time figuring out the new Upper Hudson Library System website, and she was able to navigate it through so I could get into my lists to add books and take books off. So Susan Palmer needs to get a pat in the back.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Right. Next item is committee and liaison reports. Trustees reporting out upcoming events. Briefly, I will say that date night at Pine Hills happened, and it is still my favorite library event of the year, although I do get a little stressed about my inability to alphabetize things when, searching for books, but it was a lot of fun. Trustee Veneta was there too. I saw them. All right, I'll pass this to you for the audit and finance.
Thank you. Yes. Audit and finance had a lunchtime meeting, which was really successful in trying to find some time to schedule on the 11th. And we discussed the presentation, which folks will be seeing in just a little bit. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Ooh, Upper Hudson, that's me. Upper Hudson did meet, and I didn't prepare my notes. Sorry about that. I was thinking ahead. Upper Hudson was so Upper Hudson is working to comply with website capability accessibility guidelines and helping member libraries deal with these upcoming changes. This is going to go into effect in April. Upper Hudson is currently working out some wrinkles with new online services. And as I alluded to last meeting, summer reading, it does in fact have dinosaurs. The summer reading theme is going to be unearthing a story, and they will be embodying that with dinosaurs. And then moving on to FFAPL. Goodness. We did have an FFAPL meeting, and that was last week. It was over phone, and so I wasn't there taking, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, everyone. FFAPL had a meeting, is working with the consultant to address issues with Donor Perfect and the other sort of internal mechanics that need to get everything functioning for smoother intake of money and thanking people and all of those things to help support the library. So moving along, are there any upcoming committee meetings? All right. There is no unfinished business. The first item on new business is the election notice. In previous years, nominating committee has been able to meet and bring forward to the board the request to start the election process. That has not been able to happen yet. So just to keep things moving for the upcoming elections, we would like to sort of start that in process, but we will need a motion. The words are written out in the agenda, as well as a second and a full vote. Okay, the motion is to approve the executive director of the Albany Public Library to notify the clerk of the City School District of Albany that the library intends to hold an election to fill 3 vacancies on the Board of Trustees of the Albany Public Library during the May 19th, 2026 annual school district meeting. It is further resolved that the 2 candidates who received the highest total number of votes cast in their favor shall each fill a 5-year term ending in 2031, created by the expiration of 2 current trustees' terms. And the candidate who receives the 3rd highest number of votes cast in their favor shall fill a vacancy for the balance of a term ending in 2027, created by the resignation of former trustee Lynette Robinson. It is further resolved that pursuant to Section 260 of the Education Law, nominating petitions for the election must be filed with the district clerk on or before 5 p.m. on April 29th of 2026.
You need a first and second, correct? Or just a second?
Correct, a first and second.
I move to approve the resolution of the election notice.
Thank you, Trustee Gauze. Thank you, Trustee Veneta. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Trustee, okay, any opposed? Trustee Pryor, you've gone on and off of mute, and I've seen your lips move, but I haven't heard anything.
Aye.
Perfect, thank you. So that is, well, guess I don't need to ask for nays because that's all of us. It passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And I will pass this over for the budget proposal.
Do you want me to say anything or can?
We have a PowerPoint
Okay.
presentation for our audience tonight, and I will note that the Audit and Finance Committee, when they met on February 11th, voted to move to recommend the proposed 26-27 budget to the full board as presented to the committee on February 11th, but the vote will not be taking place until the March 10th meeting. The purpose of this special budget meeting and session is to review the background information about the vote or about the proposed budget. So that's what we're here to do tonight. Do you want to add anything?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start with first, just want to say that the budget process is something I'll go over in the course of this presentation so that anyone watching from home can understand how the annual budget is kind of formulated over the timeline of a regular budget year. And I will get into that in a little bit. I also want to say that this PowerPoint presentation will be available for public view in the agenda. It'll be linked in the agenda like the other meeting materials are. So if you're viewing from home, you can go to our Board of Trustees page and go to the agenda for tonight, which is the February 23rd agenda. And then under each agenda item, there's a hyperlink to any materials that go with that item. So that's where you'll see this as of tomorrow, but you'll right now be able to see the fiscal 27 proposed budget as well as the tax impact statement, which I'll go over tonight as well. All right. I'm going to just first give you a broad overview of the proposed increase to the operating budget tax levy, which is a 17% increase for fiscal 26-27. This is an increase that is over the tax cap. We do not yet know exactly what this year's tax cap is because we are awaiting basically the pilot figure for this year. But once we have that, we'll be able to know what the tax cap is. No matter what, this 17% increase is going to be above the tax cap. It would have significant and lasting effects for APL in the sense that our existing branches and current hours would be protected. The operating budget would be balanced for the first time since before 2011, and I'll get into a little of that history later on. And a capital improvements and contingency line would be established to safeguard against the inevitable rainy day and help fund necessary capital improvements, which I'll also get into in a little bit. Are we okay, Melanie?
We're not progressing.
Okay.
We're probably just gonna have to go through the screen.
Can we confirm that we're looking at slide number 2 on YouTube? Okay, thank you for your patience. So I'm going to go over each of these points in more detail later in the presentation. What you're looking at now is our annual budget cycle. So the board and the finance director and myself start formulating the next year's operating budget around November, December. In the case of this year, we've actually been talking about this budget need for some time longer than that. We started actually talking about it around this time last year. And the task of the Audit and Finance Committee is to hear the facts, hear the background, hear the rationale for the budget, and then make a recommendation to the full board. So that's what you just heard before I started the presentation. I covered the February 11th Audit and Finance Committee meeting. So we are at the point where the special budget meeting is obviously happening now, and the board votes to place whatever the recommended increase is on the ballot at the March 10th board meeting, full board meeting. In April and throughout May, I go around to neighborhood associations and community groups, and I make sure that I do a good job of educating the community on whatever the budget increase is and why we need this increase, and anything else related to the library election. And this year, of course, there will be trustee elections as well, so I'll be covering the available seats on the board, and all of that information is important for the community to understand in order to make an informed decision once it comes time to vote. Voting day this year is May 19th, and then the new fiscal year begins July 1st. It's worth noting that we do not actually receive the tax levy funds until October. So we're relying on our reserve to fund the operating costs for the first 3 months, of the new fiscal year. And that will come up later in this presentation as well. Okay, so I want to go over some recent budget history because it is relevant to the increase that we're looking for this year. Back in 2007, a lot of voters will remember that we sought 29.1 million for the branch improvement plan. The branch improvement plan was a grand plan to expand library services in the city of Albany. It established the new Arbor Hill West Hill branch. It established the new Bach branch and major renovations to Delaware, Howe, and Pine Hills. So it was a major and significant and amazing investment in library services in the city of Albany. And then a few years after that branch improvement plan was completed, so in 2011, the library determined that we actually needed additional funds for our operating costs. And for that reason, the board sought a 25% tax levy increase, which was unsuccessful. It was voted down at the ballot, and the revote was conducted a few months later, also in 2011, and a 15% increase was sought during that revote. That revote passed by 53%. Since 2011, annual operating budget tax increases have been minimal. So in 5 of the years between 2011 and now, there were no tax increases at all. In the other years, increases were kept under the tax cap, and in most cases, well under the tax cap. And cumulative operating budget tax levy increase over the 14 years between 2012 to 2025 amounted to 22.78%, or an average of 1.62% annually. So very minimal increases as an average year over year between 2011 and now. And the reasons for that are many, and I don't want to go into the fine details of the budget history, but basically that failed vote was just a real stressful moment for the library, and going back out for that revote was it was a difficult time when a lot of people were unhappy about the fact that they had just invested or just voted in favor of the 29.1 million for the branch improvement plan, and then were being asked to open their wallets again very soon after that vote. So I mentioned that because that was the history then, and it led to more minimal increases between then and now. So I'll get into a summary statement about that now. We have been projecting six-figure deficits ever since 2011. And what that means is that in each budget, in each operating budget for the library each year, there was an anticipated need for fund balance. So you would see a fund balance, a projected fund balance use line in each operating budget since 2011. So there were a few things that kept us from actually realizing those deficits in most of those years. One was numerous vacancies or open positions within our staffing model, and another was favorable outcomes in very hard to predict areas like non-tax revenue in the form of pilot, which I'll get into in a little bit, and interest income and utilities costs. So these are all highly variable lines, and they went in our favor for a while. And so for each of these years, we were anticipating the need to spend from our reserves, but not having to spend from our reserves. And that resulted in our ability to build up our reserves and to also spend some of our reserve on, of course, capital projects that we needed to do over the course of those years. Now, most of our capital projects are reimbursable from Division of Library Development grants, but there is an outlay that has to come from reserve to be eligible for those projects. So I'm going to get into this fiscal year now. So now you're looking at basically the apportionment of the operating budget between and among our departments at the library. And when I say departments, that's actually a little bit of a misnomer because this is more areas of expense. So occupancy costs relates to anything to maintain the facilities. Materials and services pertain to collections that we develop and buy for all year long, as well as programming. Administrative and miscellaneous covers stuff like insurance and just anything admin related. And then IT is any hardware, software, and IT services. So as you can see, the majority of our budget goes to payroll and related costs. So that's employee benefits, it's New York State retirement system contributions, and it's, of course, salaries for full-time and part-time staff, as well as temporary staff. So this budget year, and then the little graph on the right, the little pie chart on the right in black and gray, represents the revenue that we see each year. Most of our tax revenue supplies the funds for our operating budget, or most of our operating budget comes from tax revenue, I should say. And then we have a very small portion of non-tax revenue that we receive, and it is limited, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But this year we are projecting an operating deficit of over 800,000, as you can see. We don't expect to fully realize that $800,000 deficit, but we will see a six-figure deficit to our operating budget again. Last year's deficit was on the order of 700,000. It was a little bit more than 700,000. So this year we're on track to realize a similar size deficit, and that's not sustainable. As I said, 93% of the operating budget is tax dollars. I did want to give you a view of where we get our non-tax revenue from. So New York State grants, that's mostly funds that are for the central library. So each library system in the state of New York has a central library. We happen to be the central library. This grant money is basically a pass-through for the whole Upper Hudson library system. The pilot is payment in lieu of taxes, which I'll get into later. Interest income is from investments, very secure investments that we make as a strategy to grow our funds a little bit as we can in very secure vehicles. Fees and sales are anything from printing, copying that we receive in the library, as well as a commission from Navigator Pass sales, which are bus passes and CDTA passes. Rental income, this number is a little bit off because we saw 37,000 this year, but that number includes an amount of rent that we received from ACAP or Head Start. ACAP has since moved out of the Washington Avenue branch, so we're actually going to be looking at 27,000 in rent income for next fiscal year. Other grants represent grants that we receive from Upper Hudson, from other sources. We also, this past year we received a $4,000 grant just for completing certain sections of the equity committee. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Sorry, folks. This is the chart I've been talking about for the last couple minutes. Thank you. So this is the breakdown of our non-tax revenue. And if that happens again, just yell.
I really thought we were just like talking about the little gray pie. I'm like, okay. I'm trying to visualize it.
All good. So I'm going to move on to a little bit of a closer look at the pilot payments, because pilot does represent a large source of non-tax revenue. And it's good to understand a little bit better what pilot has looked like for us over time. So a payment in lieu of taxes is an annual payment that a property owner agrees to pay to a local taxing jurisdiction instead of traditional property taxes. And so pilot payments come through the school district, and we receive a portion of pilot this way. In 2018, the agreements resulted in over $400,000 in pilot. As you can see, it kind of stayed in that range, increased a little, decreased a little from year to year. In 2024, we started seeing that amount change. And the main reason for that is reassessments. So as properties get reassessed and as those properties have pilot agreements, those agreements are changed and updated per the assessment. So we started seeing a drop in pilot in 2024. It dropped again in 2025. We do not anticipate that it will drop yet again in 2026, but we don't have the pilot number yet. That is something that we are waiting for from the city school district, and we know we're going to get that number very soon. So I just wanted to focus on that for a minute because it is a sizable portion of our non-tax revenue. So that brings us to our current financial status. And this is going to be a little bit of a review of some of the things I've already spoken about, but those non-tax increase years that we saw between 2011 and now, together with the impact of New York State minimum wage increases that took place from 21 to 25. And by the way, most of our staff are union, and we had to adjust the salary tables when the minimum wage increased. We actually don't have any. We have one minimum wage earner here at the library. It's a holdover from the era when the library had many, many more pages, but that's another story. The majority of our staff are part of the salary table that had to be adjusted when minimum wage increased. And we also saw some recent losses in the non-tax revenue. I've already spoken about the pilot, and we've also seen rising employee benefits costs. Notably, health benefits costs have gone way up, which a lot of people can understand and relate to, because a lot of organizations are experiencing that. And all of this together has taken a real toll on our financial position. At the end of 24-25, fiscal year 24-25, which was the last fiscal year, we saw a $730,337 reduction in fund balance. And like I said earlier, we're on track to realize a similar deficit at the end of this fiscal year. Our fund balance is not infinite, it is finite. And you're going to get a view of the impact of those deficits in the next slide. But we simply can't rely on payroll savings from staff position vacancies and favorable variances in these hard to predict areas to control our operating expenses. And I will note that we used to see more vacancies in our staffing model in years leading up to like 23, 24. Since then, the economy has changed drastically nationally, and people are staying in their jobs more. So we're actually not seeing the turnover that we once saw, and that does have to do with what we used to see in terms of savings in our staffing model and what we are seeing now. So what this boils down to is that in order to maintain our current level of services, and I'm not talking about expanding library services or adding positions, to maintain our current level of services, we can't maintain status quo budget practices. So I'll move on to a view of status quo budget and the outlook of a status quo budget if we were to maintain increases under the tax cap for fiscal 27 and out years, so fiscal 28, 29, 30, 31. You'll see a set of numbers in red at the bottom of the screen. And I want to draw your attention to those because, again, at the top, you'll see if tax increases remain under the tax cap, and we just chose a random figure under the tax cap. In this case, we chose 2% because that's sort of a mid under the tax cap figure. We don't yet know what the tax cap is for this coming year, so it is a little bit of guesstimate here. But if we were to keep tax increases modest, so 2% between like 2 and 4, whatever, this is the deficits that we would be projecting are in red at the bottom of the screen. So our operating deficit, which also represents, of course, what we would have to spend from our reserves, from our fund balance, would be over $1 million in fiscal 27, and then another million, on and on. And the other relevant area that I want to point your attention to at the bottom is the fund balance total at the fiscal year start. So you'll remember the slide where I showed you that there are 3 months before the beginning of the fiscal year when we have to use what is in our reserves in order to operate the library. So pay salaries, open the branches. If we maintain tax increases under the tax cap in fiscal 27, we are setting ourselves up for less than what we need to spend to open the library and keep all the current services going at the beginning of fiscal 28. So that means that we would not be able to open all the branches we have now. It means that we would have to lay people off, et cetera. So that's something that's important to see because it's important to understand how this falls off, and it falls off rather dramatically in fiscal 20 at the beginning of fiscal 28. But that's assuming, of course, no action really other than maintaining the status quo. So now I want to turn your attention to a different outlook. This is the proactive outlook. So with this outlook, we see the 17% tax cap override in fiscal 27 and what it does for the overall budget health, as well as what it allows us to do if all of the projections we have now remain kind of in the range that we expect them to for the out years for fiscal 28, 29, 30, 31. Now, of course, the board is not going to be voting on a whole 5-year plan in March. The board is only voting on the fiscal 27 increase. So I wanted to illustrate this because it shows the effect of what this year's increase can have on the out years. And again, that's making some assumptions about certain numbers that we expect to stay in the range that they're in now. So health benefits would be one example, rental income, tax cert payments, interest income, thank you. So, and utilities, thank you. So those are some of the figures that we're counting on to stay within the range that they're in now. But as you can see, the line in yellow shows the capital improvements and contingency line, which we have not had since before 2011, and which will be necessary to maintain our 7 library branches. I will put a little footnote on the 7 library branches because North Albany is technically maintained by the city school district. It's attached to North Albany Middle School, but 6 branches is just as concerning in terms of making sure that we have that rainy day figure, and that we have some ability to build our reserves as surpluses allow from year to year. There's no guarantee that we will see surpluses year to year, but the idea is that if we do nothing, or if we do less than 17%, we will not be able to have any real hope of being able to rebuild our reserves in out years. So the other thing I want to illustrate is just that fund balance total at fiscal year start. That number will obviously vary depending on the fiscal year results year to year. And I guess that's just another way of stating what I just said. But my favorite line in this particular proactive 5-year outlook is that operating deficit / use of fund balance. That is at 0 for the first time since before 2011. So we're essentially balancing the budget with this move. I will now move on to everyone's least favorite slide, which is what if there's no tax increase for fiscal year 26-27. And it's really important that the community understand what is at stake here. So I would then work with the Board of Trustees to determine how library services would need to change. And some of the examples of changes that public libraries have to consider when services are limited due to budget constraints are branch closures, reduced hours, reduced staffing. Reduced staffing can be achieved in a number of ways: hiring freezes, reducing part-time hours, eliminating positions through attrition or layoffs, offering early retirement incentives. But no one necessarily wants to go there. I mean, what that means is that we have a very different looking library system than we have now. And if there's anything that we were shown with the branch improvement plan back in 2007, it's that Albany really, truly values its library system, wanted to see more library, voted in favor of a 7-branch system. And I can only assume and operate on the assumption that that is the library system that Albany wishes to maintain and hopefully improve on in years to come. I'm going to move on to the second to last slide, which is the tax impact slide. The tax impact of a 17% increase amounts to, if we're looking at sort of the mid-range there of a home assessed at $250,000, it's about a $40 increase on the current library taxes. I will also note that the operating tax levy is proposed for us, or rather the 17% increase is proposed for the operating tax levy, but the overall tax levy actually only increases by 14.5%, because what you see there, the numbers, the dollar figures in the 25-26 line and in the 26-27 line, those dollar figures represent not only the library operating budget tax, but also the bond that the whole community of taxpayers is paying down for the branch improvement plan. So the total amount that an individual that a homestead, I should say, is paying in library tax is divided between those two pots. So I think that's worth noting because even though we're asking for a 17% increase for the operating budget tax levy, the impact is actually a little bit less than that in terms of the increase between this year and next year. So that is basically the last point I wanted to make. And at this point, I really just want to thank the Audit and Finance Committee for their help in sort of thinking through these numbers. I also want to thank the entirety of the board for their care and time and attention spent during this whole budget cycle, so far anyway. And I really can't say enough about that duty of care that the board displays. And I am very grateful for all the good questions that I receive from the board, from the community, that help strengthen the broader understanding of why this budget need is important and critical for library services. So with that, I think we're going to end the PowerPoint presentation. Is everything okay? All right, so that concludes the special budget meeting presentation, and I would love to entertain questions.
Hi, President Masinski. When will the bond for the branch improvement plan be paid off? Like, how much longer are we having that as well?
I believe it's 2037. Don't quote me on that just yet, but I'm fairly sure that's what it is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we'll get to that number for you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to do the math on that in my head. So how many years total was the bond? It was 2007. Yes, 37. Okay, thank you. For some reason, I had 2011 stuck in my head, and I was like, "What is that?" Okay. Can I ask a question since I have this? Okay. Do you happen to have the figures on how much was saved through the staffing vacancies?
We could probably get those for you, but we don't have them readily available.
Okay.
You mean like year over year, going back to 2011, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense of, when we're talking about how the years that the deficit was projected but avoided, and we're talking about the pilot payments and the staffing model. We have that information now with the pilot payments. I was just kind of curious what the numbers on the staffing looked like as well.
Yeah, we could probably get those for you, or at least a good estimate. But it would take a little time, and I'm happy to share that information.
Yeah, and even like for the pilot, you went back to 2018. I mean, I think that's just helpful in getting a sense of a little bit more of the picture of how we got here.
Trustees online, do you have any questions?
Not at this time. Not at this time. Not at this time either.
Okay, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that come up after the meeting between now and obviously May 10th, March 10th, when the board votes. I invite questions from the board, from the community, from whoever. And yeah, you can email me, call me, stop by. Happy to help with more information.
All right, thank you. Is there additional public comment? Okay. No additional public comment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Pryor. Second from Trustee Jackson. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Trustee Gauze?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:45.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night.